Mm-hmm.
So we need to work on that little piece of legislation just to get that. Once the formula is applied and a dollar amount is derived at, the county should be compelled to pay that amount.
Then how do you balance that with the fact that the state is cutting the counties and the feds are cutting the states? I mean, how do you balance the fact that you want to hold the feet to the fire of the county commissioners on tax equity when, in fact, their funds are being withheld?
And our funds are being withheld also on the state highway user funds.
Correct.
A tremendous amount, a couple of $1 million. And so the formula may have to be worked on as these kinds of cuts come down from the state. And the state, they're just like everyone else. They have to balance the budget, and it's always going to run downhill. And I don't know that we should hold the county's feet to the fire to do something that's counterproductive, because we're part of the county.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in this together. When we're in the city, we have two obligations, one to our city and one to our county. And I just think that we need a better working relationship with those commissioners and the aldermen so that we can identify those areas and reach an agreement before the end of the budget process.
It's really more of a congenial working relationship that you're really talking about, because I know what we did, what big issue in '86 was municipalities wanted more money in parks. So, I mean, being smart that we were, we just said, you guys and gals work out who gets what and come to us.
Yeah.
And then we'll just give you the checks according to what you have decided that you want. I mean, just make them do the work.
The other side of the tax equity is that there are two methods of payment. One is the county can write a check to
we could have blood.
We could. They can write a check to the municipality who puts it in their operating budget and spends the money. And the other method of reimbursement is a tax offset, where we receive a direct reduction in our county tax rate.
Okay, well, let's explore that when we come back, because that's something I think is very interesting. This is Blaine Young's show on 930 WFMD, and Frank and I are in the studio interviewing John Daniels, who's a Democrat for alderman in the city of Frederick, and he spent the first part of this segment telling us some really interesting things about himself, and also some very, I have to say, I'm really impressed, some enlightened positions for somebody who's so new to Frederick and has never been in office before. But when we were going to break, you were talking about a couple ways of doing a tax equity, and we got the first one out, like the county would give a check, and then you were getting ready to talk about another way of doing it, and then maybe finish up on how you would approach the budget, or any budget, how you do it the same or different.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back. And I was talking about the tax equity and the way we can deal with it as a municipality. We can receive that tax inequity or equity as a lump sum that the city then reincorporates into its operating budget, or we can receive it in the form of a tax offset, which is a direct offset to all of the residents of the city who pay county property tax, of course. You would just get a lower tax rate. That's actually my desire. I would prefer to see the residents of the city have that tax offset. I think that it's a more realistic way for residents of the city to see that contribution, that dual contribution.
And thereby you avoid the whole potential of the county taking the money back.
Exactly.
But that would require enabling legislation, correct?
It would. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I'm not
I don't
sure.
know if it, nor I.
I think that is already in the legislation, that it can be made in one of two ways.
Okay.
We can't go there immediately because that's a significant part of our operating budget. And so we have to address ways to decrease our spending if we're going to let the residents have that money. And I think the way we need to do that is to start now, looking at the budget, looking at every line on the budget, and we need to move to a modified zero-based budget. We need to look at every line, and every department needs to justify every line they're asking for on the budget. I know that's difficult. I know it's a long process, but I'm going to tell you, you can identify some areas that are either duplicated and are not necessary.
Whenever government does budget, almost all of their, in the operating budget, almost all is salaries and health insurance, retirement.
We do have a tremendous amount of our operating budget that goes toward employee cost, whether it be current employees or our liability for our future liabilities for retirement funding and those kinds of OPEBs, those other kinds of funds. But there's still places in the budget that can be cut. I'm not sure where all of those places are because I've looked at the budget, but I haven't tried to analyze every line. It's a pretty complex document. I do think that there are ways that we could reduce some of those costs. And we're just going to have to wait on the revenue stream to increase. The economy is just not at the point where we can expect an increase in property values like we were seeing from 2002.
Which were very unrealistic, I think we all would have to admit.
And I think we didn't prepare. I think we were looking at a gift horse, and we didn't take advantage of it.
Well, but I think there were a few of us out there who were saying that the Americans were carrying too much debt, that you could not tell me that all those SUVs were paid for, that all these McMansions that people were buying were paid for, or had a mortgage that was affordable, for lack of a better word. Yeah. And you can't blame the municipalities and all when you had people at the federal level who were saying, the economy's good, don't worry about it, the economy's good. When all of a sudden Bernanke walks in on a Friday or whatever on Tuesday or Wednesday and said we need all this $1 trillion by Friday or the whole thing is going to fall apart. So
you think that may be just a way we do business, though, at the federal level and at the city? We did that with the retirement buyout. It came in all of a sudden. We had to get it in now, So maybe that expedient method is just a way we're doing business.
Maybe that's not a good way to do business. No, at the federal level, I think they just didn't have a clue until somebody woke them up. I don't think they were doing their job. That's just my personal opinion.
I would like to think someone was driving the bus.
I don't think so. I think somebody woke them up and said, hey, buddy, you're in charge of this program, and guess what? You ain't got no more money as of Friday or whatever. But then, of course, it'll run over another couple of weeks. But that's the federal level.
You may be absolutely correct.
Well, I'm just, what can I tell you? You had also talked about additional transportation options for Frederick. In just like another minute or so, can you kind of like share your thoughts with the voters about those?
What I would like, of course, what most of us would like to see is an increase use of the MARC train, so we could have weekend trips. I know for myself, I would take more trips to D.C. on Friday and come back on Sunday if there was a train. I understand that all of these transportation options cost money, and it's all based on need and demand and the number of people.
And the fact that CSX owns a track.
The tracks that are used for cargo during the other hours. Mm-hmm. I think there may be some lease time available on those tracks, but again, I'm not aware of all of that.
But it's something that you want to look at. Yeah,
I would like to look at that.
Well, Frank and I were talking in the first half hour. That's some of the things that we'd like to have is the flexibility of mass transit. Like we could leave Frederick at 10 and decide you want to leave D.C. at 2. And then come back. I mean, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. We can't use it unless you want to leave at 8:30. Then come on back. I think the first train is out at 4:30. Oh, 5. Okay, I thought it was 4:30.
I agree. It would be nice to go to Washington D.C. in the morning for a meeting, or go for lunch and be able to get back before night. That's one thing I would like to look at.
Okay, we have about a minute, so you want to wrap up some other transportation?
I just want to say that until we put these issues on the table, bike paths. Increased MARC, the possibility of a light rail extension instead of more concrete for 270. Until we put these things on the table and look at them and analyze them and dissect them and take them apart, we don't even know they exist. But if you go to a city like Portland, Oregon, you can see that they were thinking about these issues 30 years ago, and we need to start now.
All right, we want to thank you, Mr. Daniels, for coming in for Blaine Young Show. He apologizes again for not being